You're mid-sentence. Someone is waiting for your answer, and your mouth just stops. Not because you don't care, not because you have nothing to say. The words are right there and they won't come out. That's not emotional immaturity. That's your ancient brain pulling an emergency brake it's been perfecting for 200,000 years. Here's what this video is going to give you: the actual mechanism behind that silence, why it happens in your body before your mind even registers it, and more importantly, how you stop being a prisoner of it. The part that will change how you see yourself, though, lives at the end. Because once you understand what your silence is actually doing, you'll never call yourself emotionally unavailable again. This is primal mind, where we decode the prehistoric wiring running your modern life. You've been handed a label. Maybe someone called you cold, emotionally unavailable, shut down, difficult to reach. Or maybe you handed yourself that label lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying the moment you went blank in a conversation that mattered, wondering what is wrong with you that you couldn't just talk, couldn't just say the thing, couldn't stay present when the person in front of you needed you to. The shame of it is specific and heavy. It feels like a character flaw so deep it's structural, like something in you is simply missing. But here's what nobody told you. The silence was never a failure of character. It was a command, issued from the deepest, oldest part of your nervous system. And it wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem isn't that you shut down. The problem is that you've been living in a world that calls that shutdown weakness, when it is, in fact, a survival protocol so sophisticated that no technology we've ever built can replicate it. What you experienced in that moment has a name. Researchers in the field of psychophysiology call it emotional flooding, and more precisely, what happens in the body during flooding is a state called diffuse physiological arousal, or DPA. John Gottman, a psychologist at the University of Washington who spent over 4 decades studying couples in his famous Love Lab, noticed something that stopped him cold. During high-conflict conversations, certain people didn't just get upset. Their heart rates spiked above 100 beats per minute, sometimes hitting 165, and at that threshold, something strange happened. They went quiet. They checked out. They looked like they weren't trying. But when Gottman wired them up and tracked the data, he found their bodies were in full physiological emergency, the heart pounding, cortisol flooding the bloodstream. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for language, reasoning, and nuanced thought, going partially offline. These people weren't choosing silence. Silence was being chosen for them by a system far older and far more powerful than conscious will. And this is where your ancestors walk in. Because that system didn't evolve for arguments. It evolved for predators. Picture the African savanna, roughly 70,000 years ago. A small group of humans moving through tall grass. One person hears something, a shift in the sound, a shadow at the edge of vision. In that fraction of a second, the amygdala fires like a lit fuse. Cortisol and adrenaline crash into the bloodstream simultaneously. The body makes a binary decision: fight, flee, or freeze. And here is the truth that most people never hear. Freezing was not the coward's option. Freezing was often the smartest one. A predator's visual system is triggered by movement. Stillness, silence, total shutdown of non-essential output, including vocalization, was camouflage. The person who went quiet in the grass was the one who survived to have children. Who passed that nervous system down? To you. Your silence in a heated conversation is not emotional failure. It is inherited camouflage, activated by a threat your body cannot yet distinguish from a lion. There's a second layer to this, and it's the one that explains why the silence feels so total, so suffocating, like your own thoughts are locked behind a door you can't find the key to. When DPA kicks in, the brain does something precise and ruthless. It reroutes blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex, your language center, your empathy processor, your future thinking machine, and redirects it toward the limbic system and the motor cortex, toward pure survival circuitry. This is why, in the middle of flooding, you cannot access the words you know you have. It's not that they're gone, it's that the highway to them has been deliberately closed. Think of it like a city cutting power to the residential neighborhoods during a blackout to keep the hospital running. Your brain is keeping the hospital running. Language is the neighborhood. It goes dark. And there's a third mechanism underneath, even that one, something researchers call the dorsal vagal response, the oldest branch of the vagus nerve, a shutdown so ancient it predates mammals. When the threat feels not just dangerous but inescapable, the nervous system doesn't just slow down. It collapses inward, heart rate drops, voice flattens, the body plays dead. Not metaphorically, physiologically. This response is so old it exists in fish. You carry it in your spine. But here's the part nobody talks about. The thing that costs you silently every single day. That ancient system cannot read a calendar. It cannot tell the difference between a hostile work email and a hostile predator. Between a partner raising their voice and a threat to your physical survival. The world you were born into changes its shape every decade. Open offices, constant notifications, the psychological violence of being always reachable, always evaluated. Your biology has not had 10,000 years to catch up. It's had 30, so the flooding happens more. The silence comes faster. And the cost is not just the missed conversations. It's the relationships that erode because you couldn't explain yourself in the moment. The opportunities that closed because you froze in the room where it mattered. The private story you've been telling yourself that you are somehow less than other people who can just talk through hard things. That story is the real damage. And it was built on a misdiagnosis. So here's how you work with this instead of against it. The first thing is to learn your own threshold signal, the specific body sensation that comes just before the flood, not during it. For most people, it's a tightening in the chest or a kind of pressure behind the eyes. Gottman's research shows that once heart rate exceeds 100 BPM, rational conversation is physiologically impossible, so your job is to catch the 85. Name it out loud if you can. I'm starting to flood, not as an excuse, as information. Because naming activates the prefrontal cortex slightly. The same way turning on a flashlight in a dark hallway doesn't fix the blackout, but lets you see the door. The second thing is a strategic pause, not walking away, not shutting down the conversation, but a deliberate 2-0-minute break. 20 minutes is not arbitrary. That's the minimum time cortisol needs to clear the bloodstream enough for your prefrontal cortex to come back online. Less than that and you're still in the flood, just pretending you've dried off. Tell the person, I need 20 minutes, and I'm coming back. Then do something physically rhythmic walk, breathe slowly, wash dishes. The rhythm signals safety to the nervous system in a language older than words. The third thing is to reframe the silence itself, in the moment, before shame can colonize it. When you feel the shutdown beginning, there is a sentence you can say to yourself, not necessarily out loud, my system is protecting me right now. Not broken, protecting. That single cognitive shift interrupts the shame spiral that makes flooding worse, because shame is itself a threat signal, and it throws gasoline on the fire your body is already trying to contain. The silence that has followed you, the one you've apologized for, explained around, felt humiliated by, it was never emptiness, it was armor. Specifically calibrated, evolutionarily ancient armor, deployed by a system that loved you enough to shut you down before you said something in a flooded state that could not be unsaid, or before you exposed yourself to a threat your body was certain you couldn't survive. The person who went quiet in that conversation wasn't absent. They were being protected by 200,000 years of accumulated survival intelligence. Your body didn't fail you. It remembered something your conscious mind forgot, that sometimes silence is the thing that keeps you whole. You are not broken. You are precisely calibrated. The threat has just changed shape. When was the last time your body pulled you into silence and you had no idea why until right now? Write it in the comments, because the specific moment matters, and you might find someone else's story in there that sounds exactly like yours. If this kind of decoding is what you've been looking for, the next video goes even deeper into what your nervous system has been trying to tell you.